Ready to light that fire by doing the things that make you come alive? Welcome to Health Raisers, a podcast for wise women. I'm your host, Dr. Nadine. I left a soul-crushing medical career full of bad news and evolved into a joyful health integration coach, helping hundreds of women find their healthy. You're more than your dress size. Stop putting up with toxic relationships, swallowing your true emotions, and sacrificing your mental health. Stop using your body as a battlefield. You're always giving. You deserve to put yourself first, not just for your sake, but for those you love. Wise women, let's make ourselves a priority right now. It's time to raise some health together. Welcome, Lindsey Feldpausch. She is a registered herbalist who seamlessly blends science and tradition in her work as the Herbal Academy's program coordinator. She draws from over 2,000 hours of study with renowned herbalists, and Lindsey's gift lies in making the profound healing connection between humans and plants accessible to all. Thank you so much for being here, Lindsey. We are thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. And hello to everyone in the audience. I am so honored to be here with you all today. I hope the conference is going so well so far and everyone's having a blast talking about plants.
We're all nerds here, so nerds to have fun.
Yeah, we're in good company.
So my first question for you is, we love to learn about here on Health Raisers. We love to learn about people's journeys. It's not insignificant to understand where you came from and how you got to where you are in your journey right now and how that will continue forward. But can you share how you journeyed into herbalism and what inspired you to pursue this path?
Absolutely. I love sharing my story and hearing other people's stories about how they got into the plant world. So for those of you out there in the audience, I know everyone's in the Michigan, Indiana region, right? At least currently. And this is actually where I grew up. So I grew up in Southeast Michigan and I grew up in suburbia. So I was in Metro Detroit, Plymouth Canton area, and I did go outside and play, in the lawn, but I really didn't develop a connection with plants as individuals until much later in my life. So, grew up in suburbia, not a lot of focus on gardening or interacting with plants. There wasn't anyone in my life who was really, I had a great grandfather who grew strawberries, but I definitely had a green wall up. I didn't know any of the plants that were growing in my region until I went to college and I moved into a house where me and my roommate started gardening, and this was in Detroit. And we had a garden where lettuce and kale looked like coming out of the ground for the first time ever. And we also had a little medicinal herb garden. And I started asking questions. I was like, what is this herb? And what is this good for? And once you start noticing that herbs are individual and that they have unique personalities and, growth habits, and they have different usages, which is obviously the lineage that I then traveled down, I got really interested in that green wall. Right, it started breaking, and I could see the plants for, different shapes and colors and styles. So it was a really beautiful awakening to plants and to nature for me. And I went on from there to do extensive study. I went on the clinical herbalism path. So my work has had been in clinical herbalism, where I help people to connect with the plants that can support their health and well-being. So I have a lot of training in that area and in turn experience. And then I've also worked in education for the majority of my career as well. And I think the two go hand in hand. So I love teaching people about herbs. I love talking to people about how herbs can benefit their bodies. And that is my story in a nutshell. I currently work for Herbal Academy, which is an incredible online herbalism school that has a great course offerings, so many different courses, and everyone out in the audience has one of our works, I do believe. So this is our botanical mixed drink recipe book, which we will be talking about today.
So what do you think are the most common misconceptions or things that might hold people back from learning more about the natural plant world and how we're really not separate from it?
It's such a fascinating idea, right? Like, we would not be here without plants in every way, shape, and form. Our species as humans on this planet is dependent upon plants, right? And so we need them for food. We need them for shelter. We need them for clothing, and we can utilize them for their physiological impacts on our bodies through food and medicine, right? So my common misconceptions that I would say that I see is that you think you are disconnected from plants, or that there isn't an ingrained sense of working with plants within you, right? And I just think that that is inherently false. Like, plants are integral to our experience as humans on this planet. So when we think about people who, I remember when I first started in herbalism, right? And I would tell people I'm an herbalist, and they would think that, like, I only worked with one plant, right? They were like, oh, like cannabis? Like, no, actually, there's a lot of other plants that impact the body out there in the world, right? And so now we're just in a totally different world where herbalism is really popular. If we look at the botanical drinks, or if we look at, cocktails or mocktails in general, like, so many aspects, literally the base of any spirit is a plant, right? And the process of fermentation with sugars, corn, wheat, rye, barley. What are we doing here? We're, creating different spirits with plants, and it's all integrated. And then, of course, we can up our game with botanical mixed drinks and create, a greater relationship with plants through these beverages. But yeah, I would say that the misconceptions for me are, that you don't have, the access to the knowledge or the relationship with plants. And I just think that we all do. We all really do.
Bringing you Health Raisers is possible because of these incredible sponsors. Feeling the need for a little pampering? Do you want an escape from the hustle and bustle of daily life? Mac Salon and Day Spa is your destination for relaxation and rejuvenation in Southwest Michigan. Get ready for a retreat in the woods. Mac offers comprehensive services tailored to your needs, including massage, facials, nails, waxing, and hair treatments, ensuring you feel refreshed and beautiful. Whether you're preparing for a special occasion or simply treating yourself, the experts at MAC are committed to helping you look and feel your best. Their commitment to wellness isn't just about beauty. It's about balance, confidence, and feeling amazing in your skin. Visit them today and discover why they're Southwest Michigan's premier choice for all your beauty needs. Looking for some time away from the chaos of everyday life? Step into the beauty of Fernwood Botanical Garden, where nature, peace, and renewal come together. Nestled along the scenic St. Joseph River Valley, in between Niles and Buchanan, Fernwood's 105 acres of lush gardens, quiet trails, and serene woodlands offer a sanctuary for replenishing your soul. Wander through vibrant landscapes, listen to the melodies of birds, and connect with nature at your own pace. Indoors, you'll find an inspiring art gallery, a lush fern conservatory, and a welcoming cafe, perfect for reflection and relaxation. At Fernwood, there's always something to discover, from engaging classes and special events to charming, verdant venues for your own gatherings. It's more than a destination, it's a feeling, a place to breathe, learn, and grow. Plan your visit today. Explore, discover, connect. In the mood for coffee, tea, yummy pastries, or cool swag? My friends at Infusco have got you covered. Infusco Coffee Roasters is a cozy neighborhood coffee joint in Sawyer and St. Joseph, Michigan. Infusco stands for a healthy community. They craft irresistible seasonal drinks, sourcing local artisans' products. The flavors shine from quality ingredients, and their beans are roasted on site. They do not hide behind tons of sugar. Every time I go, I'm greeted by my name with a smile. Bad service is just non-existent. It feels like stepping into a friend's living room. They keep it personal. Old school, eclectic coffee mugs on the wall, fun merch, including stickers designed by artists, t-shirts, and sweatshirts. It's the perfect place to get to know your neighbors and chat with tourists. You will always find people deep in conversation. Special events keep it fresh. Community, health, the heart of Sawyer. That's Infusco. I hope to meet you there. I think maybe something that might hold people back, especially given, I come from a traditional medical background. It's this hesitation, maybe because it's not necessarily a black and white thing, or, things don't come in a package with very clear instructions versus you get something from pharmaceuticals, it's a specific dosage, it's been studied and all that. Do you think that adds to some of the hesitation as well, or am I just crazy?
I absolutely think that we've lost some of that relationship with plants, right? So if we were to travel back in time, 100, 200 years, people knew plants. They knew what they were good for. They knew how to use them. They knew how to eat with them. They knew how to work with them, how to build with them, all the things with them, because that is how we survived. And we have lost that. So when we think about herbalism today, I could walk out into the yard outside my window and sit down, and there's probably half a dozen plants within arm's reach that I work with as a clinical herbalist, right? So I have developed through my studies connections with those plants. And I know everyone out in the audience are plant people. You have developed connections with these plants too. And so it's a relearning, reconnecting with nature and the knowledge that is really a part of this experience on the planet. So yeah, but it's hard when you don't have knowledge to go out and say, oh, I'm going to pick the dandelion roots in my yard and know what to do with it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where education comes in, or if your curiosity is piqued in the realm of botanical herbs, and in any way, shape, or form, mixed drinks or mocktails, or for actual physiological use, there's information out there. You have schools like the Herbal Academy that are offering online programs. There's books. There's people, there's plant walks. I'm sure everyone sitting in the audience right now has knowledge to share with each other about the ways in which you could use dandelion or violet or red clover, or these herbs that are growing right outside our doors.
Okay, so you're talking about people that have the natural curiosity, or, understand that they have that need. Mm-hmm. For instance, my family and I lived in a suburb when we were raising our children, very typical. And, it was a suburb. So it's like a kind of like a false or manufactured setting where it's like, okay, we're going to put a tree in the front yard, or we'll put two in the back, and then we'll have a window box. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's not wild. It's not free. We're putting this thing, or when I go to Chicago, it's very sparse, the typical box bushes in front with 3 flowers, no trees in sight, or maybe there's one skinny new one. But so how does a person who's not submerged in it, because I felt something in me that needed more connection, a more natural connection. That's one of the reasons why we moved to where we moved in Southwest Michigan, because you could see a lot of trees. That is slightly changing now, but at any rate, what about a person who may not feel that calling or doesn't or doesn't have the exposure to nature? How do you get someone like that to connect to, let alone we understand we drifted away from our connection to nature? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you ask is, how do we get people who aren't interested in plants to be interested in plants? I don't want to force anyone to do anything. If they don't want to talk plants or they don't want to learn about the plants, that's okay. If they have, say, health conditions that they want to work on within herbalism, but they don't actually want to learn the plants themselves, that's okay too. I still think that you could go to somebody who has the knowledge and that could share it with you to support your health and well-being. But overall, I mean, plants are amazing and we can share the bug, right? Like the inspiration and excitement that comes from conversations about plants. And even like, have you been on plant walks where there were people who were not interested in the plants? And then by the end, they're like, oh my goodness, this is fascinating. Mm-hmm. Awakening in myself, and plants are incredibly fascinating. And for people who don't have access to wild nature spaces, it's very common these days. So many of us live in cities, I feel like beginning to notice the plants that are growing. Like I went to the gym this morning and I got there and I looked, and outside of the crack between the wall of the building and the sidewalk was a beautiful cleavers plant growing. And I was just like, incredible. Now, Ness, I wouldn't use that for, anything internally, because that's not the environment with which you want to be harvesting plants from, right? But it was a friend that I saw that I was so happy to see. And in Detroit, living in the city, like I saw so many allies, so many herbal allies I could go back to and say, oh, where that Plover vein plant resides or patch resides, or the soul mimosa tree, Albizia Julie Bryson, that I have seen in that northern climate, where that lives. And yeah, once you're curious and you start looking, I think it's easy. I would also say that it's interesting as gardeners, right? So we're gardeners in this room, correct? This is so you all do a lot of planting, right? So there's a inherent cultivation within that. And then your harvest, you're weeding, right? You're weeding out those broad-leafed plants that are growing within your ornamentals or what have you. And what I find fascinating is some of our best medicines are the plants that are growing in those open spaces. Like chickweed is an incredible herb. It's a wonderful vulnerary plant. You can make an infused oil with chickweed. And it's got like a salty, kind of almost umami flavor. Weeding my garden is also a chickweed harvest, because I get to pull the chickweed out and then dry it and then utilize it. Or violets or dandelion or red clover, these plants that are prolific, that are growing in these spaces, are actually incredible allies to us as humans and for our health.
So let's get into the beverages. How can incorporating herbs and spices into beverages deepen our connection to nature and support our emotional and mental well-being?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about mental and emotional well-being throughout the rest of the conversation, I do believe, in relation to the botanicals. But what I want to kind of start with is that the connection to nature in and of itself is something that is going to support our emotional and mental well-being. Okay. As gardeners, you all know this. You know that you feel better after you garden. What are you doing in the garden? You're getting sunshine. You're getting a reprieve from the stressors of life. Literally connection to nature, time spent in nature. Research has shown that it reduces stress. It lowers our stress hormones like cortisol. It moves us from that sympathetic fight or flight mode into rest and digest. We're getting, it shows to be able to improve our mood and boost our focus and our attention. And we are also getting sunshine, vitamin D, We're getting the dirt, the microbes from the soil into our hands, into our nails and our hands. And these actually do promote physical health and well-being, mental health and well-being, and in terms of physical. But we also have time in nature showing that it actually improves our sleep and our sleep quality. We're getting physical exercise, which encourages movement, right? So we have all of these aspects of connecting to nature, and in particular, gardening, that it's going to support our health and well-being. That is absolutely ingrained in the mental health side of things. And I just think it's so important to note that. So when we're engaging specifically with herbs, one of the ways in which I really love to support that development of a relationship with plants, and I do believe that this kind of tuning in supports our mental and emotional well-being, is by engaging our senses. So think about going up to a rose in your garden, right? And smelling that rose. We're using our scent of smell, that aromatic, the volatile oils that are being emitted from that flower are going to be brought through our nasal passages. Are going to trigger cellular response that tells our brain that we're smelling a rose, and we're going to feel better, right? The volatile communication that occurs just through flowers and the sense of smell is incredibly effective at impacting our mental health and well-being. And we know this, right? We know this to be true. We feel better after we stop and smell the roses. So this is just one way that we're engaging our sense of smell, but we can also engage our sense of taste, right? So you go into your garden and say you're pruning your rosemary. Now, I am no expert on pruning rosemary, but I do know that you could take a rosemary sprig or a lavender leaf and you can chew on those very aromatic plants. And then those same, those phytochemicals that are found within the plant that give it its flavor are going to have beneficial impacts on your body. And we know that, rosemary is for memory and lavender is for calm, right? So the phytochemicals found within those plants that we receive when we take them internally are going to impact our bodies. And in part, many of these aromatic herbs are going to be nervines. And so nervines are herbs that beneficially impact our nervous system. So as herbalists, we love using nervines, and so many of the plants that you probably work with in your gardens, particularly the aromatic ones, are going to be nervines. And a lot of those are actually going to be contained in this book. So definitely want to share some of those recipes with you. But basically, nervines are the herbs that we are going to be utilizing to gain that beneficial impact on our emotional health. And they do so in various ways. Each plant is an individual, right? So we have something called specific indications for each plant. So, we know chamomile to be soothing, right, to the mind. We know that it reduces stress. We in herbalism like to say that it's for babies of all ages. People who are whiny and who like to complain about their troubles. Like, this is the specific personality type for somebody who needs chamomile. And it is actually a really safe and gentle plant to be utilized for babies and younger children. And we can see that change. I tell you, I remember a day when my son, who is now 12, was probably 5, and it was just a meltdown kind of day. And I remember we made chamomile gummies, like little jelly things, right? And as soon as he had some chamomile in his system, the meltdown stopped, the whining stopped. Next thing you know, we're playing a game. I was just like, thank goodness. So that's chamomile. And chamomile is found within the book. So one of the highlights of this book for me is, again, like pulling out these nervines and looking at all the amazing ways that we can utilize these plants. So we have in the book on page 36, a chamomile kick, which is a take on a Moscow mule. So we get to utilize these nervine aspects and qualities of chamomile in a delicious beverage that you get to have fun with, right? So that's what this is all about.
I like that, highlighting having fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting into the book a little bit more. So there are 82 recipes, and it's such a pretty book too. Just very thoughtful. How the cover, the recipe, it's just beautiful. The imagery. So 82 recipes for botanical cocktails and mocktails. How did this magical collection happen?
Yeah. So I would say that Herbal Academy has a magical team of folks working on every project. And it's really incredible to me to see the team develop in products like this, right? And they're really like their works from the heart. Like, what fun and joy and knowledge and experience and talent go into developing such a thing. So I actually was not part of the Herbal Academy team when this was developed, but I've heard all about it, and it sounded like an incredibly fun experience and, again, a work of art. But the idea behind this book and so much of what we do at the Herbal Academy is just wanting to integrate herbs into our daily lives and the lives of the people who are studying with us at the school. And this can be in this case like for flavor, and a lot of what we do is for wellness support, right? For the physiological actions that plants have on the body. It's for connection to nature. It's for creative expression. It's for everything, and it is absolutely for creating joy in our daily lives, because I believe that plants can do that. And if we need one thing in this world, it is more joy to be experienced. So yeah, we have so many recipes. So as Nadine said, we have 82 recipes for botanical cocktails, and I will highlight a couple more in relation to nervines, which we've kind of already set the stage for this, right? So I actually have one right here for you all to see. So this is our Violet Fizz. So I don't know how gardeners in general feel about violets. Okay. Like, is it a nuisance? Because it's so prolific, right? Like, I know it can grow. I have a yard of violets right now. It is violet season. We are I look out my kitchen window, like the window over my seat and my sink, and I just see a carpet of violets, and it makes me so happy because violet is one of my favorite herbs. So this Violet Fizz is made with violet syrup. So what I did is I harvested a bunch of the fresh violets, and these are the flowers. I'm working with Viola sororia, which is the species of sweet violet that grows in my region. But Viola odorata is the most common, like European sweet violet. But the sweet violets are going to have these beautiful purple flowers. There are other violets. There are white violets and there are yellow violets, and not all violets are actually edible, but the sweet violets are fantastic. So I make a violet syrup, and I make basically an infusion with the tea, and then I add sugar and I create a violet syrup, which you will have recipes within this book from, I believe it's page like 3 to 22, where it's teaching you how to make basic supplies for the botanical recipes. So these basic supplies can look like infused spirits, where, you could take violet flowers and just soak them in vodka, and it's going to turn this incredibly purple color, like purple blue. Okay. And interestingly, violet is actually a flower that can be used as a litmus test. So it can actually judge if a substance is acid or basic based on the color that it turns. So right now you see that this is kind of like maroon, right? When you actually make a violet infusion, it will be more of this blue purple color. If you add an acid, such as I did to this, which is lemon juice, it turns maroon. If you would add, say, baking soda, something really basic, which we wouldn't want to drink, but you'll actually see it turn this bright green. And that tells us that that substance that was added was basic, and the substance that was acidic turns maroon, so it's an acid. And many of the plants that are this color, like butterfly pea flower, also does that, but it's super fun in mixed drinks and botanical recipes because you can play on that color change. So yeah, the Violet Fizz is For me, I did not do the violet vodka. It's 11:56. But the recipe calls for violet vodka, but I just did cooled violet tea. And then I did my violet simple syrup, and I did fresh squeezed lemon juice and some carbonated water to taste. So yeah, this is my beautiful violet recipe that I brought to you. And violets are one of our most soothing plants, both mentally and emotionally. When you're feeling the weight of the world, the stress, violets can ease that. Even just going out into the yard and popping violet flowers into your mouth. It's also the violet leaves and flowers have mucilage. So mucilage is a polysaccharide. It is the gooey, long chain sugar that is, like when you think of aloe, right? Like that goopiness, that is the soothing, the coating and soothing that mucilage brings to our tissues. And violet does that both externally and internally. So overall, if I think of one word with violet, sweet violet is soothing. So yeah, we also have, so we're gardeners in the room. So we have some really fun recipes that with herbs that you are going to have on hand that are also going to include, this nerving action. So we have a garden mint old fashioned. So this can be any species of mint that you so choose. You're going to take that mint, you're going to shove it into a jar, and you're going to cover it with bourbon. If you do alcohol, if you don't, we can work with the mint tea. But infusing the mint into the bourbon is going to infuse that energy, the phytochemicals of the plant, into the spirit and create not only a flavorful, delicious, and aromatic extract, but it's also going to have those phytochemicals, right? So when we think about mint as nervines, the beneficial impacts they have on the nervous system, we often think about like a stimulating, energizing, right? So it can increase activity in our bodies, but in that good way. So like mental clarity and cognition, right? So the garden mint old fashioned uses that mint bourbon and then a lemon balm syrup. So if you grow lemon balm, this is another prolific herb. It's got that beautiful lemony scent, and it's basically like the most sunshiny plants. It's another Lamiaceae, it's a mint family plant that has that lemony smell, and it is really good for melancholy. So if you're having a day where you're just feeling down and melancholic, maybe that nostalgia tinted with a little bit of darkness, eating some lemon balm or taking some lemon balm tincture or, lemon balm, anything. In this case, we have syrup is going to that feeling. And then this garden mint old fashioned also has skullcap tincture, and skullcap is one of my favorite nervines, so Scutellaria lateriflora, which you guys are probably not growing, but it is a beautiful plant, and it is a nerve tonic. So it's basically going to restore our resiliency to dealing with stress, and I love it. And then I'll talk about one more. We have our linden lime raz, and this is specifically a mocktail. So all of the cocktails in this book could be turned into mocktails if you don't choose to work with alcohol. And, we are talking about mental health and well-being. So, alcohol is long-term use can be a depressant. So this is a mocktail that we're going to highlight now. So we have linden tea. So linden is an incredible herb. Lindsey, my name, is derived from linden tree. If you look back at the etymology of that word. So pretty fascinating. But linden tree, also known as lime flower. So in Europe, we have Tilia cordata, and this is a tree that is traditionally used. It's actually said that people would have their community meetings under the linden tree because it's sedative, right? It calms the mind and relaxes the spirit and allows people to open up for communication. Linden has a beautiful smell. So we do have an American linden. It's actually called basswood. So it's Tilia americana. And the smell of linden is absolutely incredible. Another one of my favorite plants. So we use the flower and bracket of linden. Just a side note, the fruit of linden actually can be used and roasted similarly to cacao, and it has a little bit of a chocolatey flavor. But The linden lime raz uses linden tea, lime juice, and you muddle fresh raspberries, and then you can do a basil salt rim. So that utilizes this incredible nervine linden. And it also highlights our basil salt rim. So there's so many different ways you can use and incorporate into mixed botanical drink botanical recipes. So whether it's like infused in the spirit itself, whether it's infused into a syrup and then utilized, whether it's a bitters blend, or the salt rims or sugar rims are super fun, right? And they make your drink look beautiful. And you get to pull out your fancy glasses that have been gathering dust in the curio cabinet for like however long, and you can really make it an opportunity to develop a relationship with plants, take them into your body in a way that is going to benefit your mental and emotional health, and also have fun making and being creative, and hopefully having social time with other people who love plants and get to enjoy these drinks with you.
So if we're looking at this experience from a newbie's perspective, what are some essential herbs and tools that you would recommend for starting, for someone who might be intimidated by and not know all of these terms and everything? What would they need to start with for a well-stocked bar?
Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of like supplies that you could look towards that you would utilize, right? Like canning jars and cheesecloths and ice cube trays and strainers and pots and pans and spoons and what have you. Like these are the basic supplies that your book will have on page 3, like outlined for you. If you are a newbie to herbalism and you're exploring this book, we have taken great care to make sure that all of the plants that are found within are going to be safe and accessible. We're not using any plants that, are endangered out in the wild or are going to endanger your health. There are safety warnings with even some of the most, like beneficial tonic plants, like, hawthorn and its ability to, act as a hypotensive. So then, if you're on blood thinners or blood pressure medication, you might want to consider utilizing that plant. But where I'm going, consider your usage of that plant. But where I'm going with this is you can, use the book as a guide if it's new to you. And if you don't have the book, if you are out in, the world and you're listening to this, I would say really starting with simple, safe food-like herbs. It is not hard to develop a relationship with mint, or chamomile, a plant that is safe, violet, right? That maybe even grows near you, dandelion. Choose an herb that's calling to you, and then research, talk to people, read about it. If it's safe, you can smell it, you can taste it, you can experience how it feels in your body, and use your innate senses as a human to connect with that plant. This is just, again, it's about developing any relationship. When you meet a person and you're like, I want to be friends with you. Like, how do you go about doing that? You engage, you put your energy and time into it. And that's plants. So I think that everyone has, if they so desire, the ability to do so. And just start with the safe, simple plants. And by simple, I mean like simple as in no contraindications or safety concerns.
So essentially taking small steps and starting with something familiar before you start branching out to avoid overwhelm is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. And it's joyful, right? This is another thing where it's like, it's so much fun to develop relationships with plants and to get to know them, at least from my perspective.
If you are starting to experiment and getting more comfortable with using herbs and you want to branch out a little bit, how do you start to, for yourself, figure out balancing flavors and therapeutic properties of herbs? Because if it's not presented, say, in a prepared bottle for you, where you can then take that experiment with it. What if you're starting anew and you want to figure out what goes together, what tastes good, and specifically, how can I use this thing to make myself feel the way I want to feel?
Yeah. So, all right. So we've got kind of a question with flavor first and foremost, and then how we utilize these herbs. So I would, absolutely, as you're developing relationships, like encourage you to experiment and explore and be creative, right? Also, the botanical mixed drinks recipe book that Herbal Academy offers, and you all in the audience have, it's going to walk you through various recipes, and these have been tested and they're tried and true. We're going to have a little bit of information on how these herbs are going to help you feel. But if you're developing a new recipe all on your own, you're going to be looking at the various flavors and how you pair those together, right? So herbs offer every single flavor. So we have sweet and sour and salty and bitter and umami in herbs. So, when we think about sweet in herbs, we can have herbs that are sweet from like their polysaccharide content. They're, these are primary metabolites of plants. They're primary metabolites that are produced by the plant for growth and development within themselves. And these carbohydrates are these sugar molecules, right? Such as mucilage, which we talked earlier, that impart a bit of sweetness to a plant. We can also have flowers that have a little bit of that sweetness from the nectar. We can have sweetness from sweet tonic herbs, we call them, like licorice or astragalus is a good one here. There's sweetness found in nature. We can actually add sweet from, plants like fruits. And we have sweetness so sweetness is just one flavor that comes from plants. We also have sour, which comes a lot from fruits as well. So we can have, the sourness of, lemons or oranges, that sour flavor. But we also have sour that comes outside of fruits, and like if you've ever tasted wood sorrel, not like oxalic acid sour. So there's, salty usually comes from minerals. So like a lot of our leafy greens are going to have a mineral density. So when we think about salty, we think about sodium chloride, right? Like table salt. But herbs that are rich in like potassium and magnesium are going to, potassium and magnesium being two examples, but all of the minerals are going to, these mineral-rich herbs are going to impart this little bit of salty-like flavor to herbs. And then bitters, we haven't talked about bitters yet, but bitters are an incredible aspect of mixed drinks, botanical mixed drinks. And I would say that they have caused a revolution in like cocktail industry, right? So this is like something that kind of was part of the like revival of these like old-fashioned cocktails that brought back in with the bitters. So herbal bitters are super fun. I love bitters. We're actually creating a bitters course right now. It's going to be launched at the end of this month called Herbal Bitters Course. And it is all about how bitters impact our health physiologically. So I could spend the next 5 hours talking about bitters and their incredible physiological benefits, but I will sum it all up and to say that when we taste the bitter flavor in our mouths, there is an incredible physiological cascade of beneficial actions that happen throughout our body. And this is because historically we have developed and evolved as a species consuming bitter plants, and we have obviously kind of strayed away from that. We have a lot of processed, refined foods that favor sweet and salty, and they kind of got rid of that bitter flavor. And, bitter was definitely we do believe that it was originally developed as a flavor sensation to tell us that there was the potential for poison. But if you look at, say, a carrot in the grocery store versus a carrot that is wild carrot, right? That is Queen Anne's lace that grows out. That is wild carrot. That is the ancestor of all the carrots in our grocery stores. And you were to taste that wild carrot root, which I would just caution you to make sure that you know what hemlock looks like before you try to do that, because our most poisonous plant, a common vegetable, is also, very similar in their appearance. So where I go with this is that the original carrot was very bitter, and our cultivation of the plant has developed the modern carrot, which is not bitter. So we're missing that bitter flavor. We actually have a name for it in herbalism, and it's the bitter deficiency syndrome. And I encourage everyone to consume more bitters in any way, shape, or form. But this is, one of the ways in which we can create these are the flavors which we're going to be utilizing to create botanical mixed drinks. So when, interestingly, when I first started getting into herbalism, I was in college and I was bartending. So I was bartender in downtown Detroit, working and studying at Wayne State University, and then bartending and like falling in love with plants on the side. So I am experienced in botanical in the cocktail realm as well. So we did have a golden ratio, it's called. So it's a 2-2-1 formula. So it's 2 parts spirit, 1 part sour, and 1 part sweet. And then I would absolutely add to that, you always need a dash of bitter. But this is the golden ratio for creating a cocktail. If you are playing with plants, you're going to get to learn how to create extractions from the botanical mixed drinks book. So again, you can extract into spirits, you can extract into vinegars, you can extract into water. You can create syrups. You can do so many things to develop herbal extracts that it can be used in the botanical mixed drink. And then you get to play around with this formula to develop your own recipes. And, again, just have fun with it. Like, it's creative, it's joyful, and it's connection to plants and nature.
As we're wrapping up, because I want to get to the experience of the drink of the day that we have, and then time for Q&A at the end. Sure. One question before my final. I want to hear more about why, what are the actual benefits, health benefits? Why are you lauding bitters so much?
Yeah, so I think about the current state of health in our society, and what do I see widespread? I see chronic degenerative illness, right? This is in every shape and form. This goes from cardiovascular disease to metabolic syndrome to diabetes to autoimmune conditions, and it's all based in inflammation, right? And I'm not saying bitters is the cure. There is no one cure. I think that whole foods, healthy lifestyle, exercise, movement, community, social interactions, it's all part of it, right? But what bitters do for us is that they help us to break down the foods that we are eating by stimulating our digestive processes. So it stimulates all the fluids across the board, and it allows us to break down the foods. And breaking down the foods, why do we do it? We do it so we can absorb the nutrients, right? So we break down our foods, and your foods have to have nutrients in them for the nutrients to be absorbed. So again, whole foods. But if we are, in this kind of digestive stagnant state that I see as I really do feel like our society is kind of in a digestive winter perpetually, where we're not actually consuming foods that are challenging our bodies. We're not consuming foods that are highly nutritious. Okay. And if we consume bitters, we're able to, if we can do those things and then consume bitters, we break down the food, we absorb the nutrients, and then bitters also help to stimulate detoxification. So it's that nutritional absorption and metabolism support. So it's going to stimulate the liver into, the detoxification pathway. So removing waste. So it's bringing the good stuff in and removing the bad stuff, in short.
Okay. So more praise for eating a more balanced, whole diet, and supporting that process with other things like bitters. Okay.
And I will just really quickly, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I will just laud the impacts of having a diverse phytochemical input. Okay. So we developed as a species, again, we evolved as a species with an incredibly diverse array of phytochemicals coming into our bodies. It's not the case anymore. We've stripped our foods, we've removed nutrients, we've removed the phytochemicals. Our foods are, re-dyed to obtain color, but this color is natural, right? These are anthocyanins, they're polyphenols, they're phenolic compounds that are, across the board. When we think about phenols, we think about antioxidants, right? They're going to be incredible for reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease. Anything that is naturally this color, like think about all of your blue and purple berries, going to be incredible for the cardiovascular system. So if we are diversifying our diets and getting natural colors, right? I wouldn't want to buy something in a can at a store that's this color because it's not going to be natural. But Yeah, diversifying our input is really a way to reduce inflammation in our bodies simply and supporting our health.
So that being said, Lindsey, what is your personal definition of what it means to be healthy?
Nadine, I have to tell you, this was probably like the hardest question that you asked me to like sum up. And it's like, well, gosh, I have 1 million answers that I could offer you and tell you, my entire clinical idea of how, health and wellness looks. So I would say that what really shines to me what is health? When I look at a person and I think, oh, they're healthy, what they are is they're vital. They have vitality. They're living their life with vitality. And that is basically in essence the desire to continue forth the life force of yourself in the world. And I think that that is developed in so many ways, right? But feeling that vitality, that life force within ourselves, to me, is the definition of existing within health. And we all have varying capacities for health, right? Like there are people who are born with like strong innate constitutions that are just healthy. Doesn't matter what they do, and then there are people who are born without the constitution that allows them, or, with potential disabilities or what have you. But those people can still be healthy within their own shape and form and still be vital, right? So the vitality allows us to connect individually with people to say, you are living your best life as you. And I think that there are many ways to do that. I would encourage connection to nature and experiencing joy as one of them, and phytochemical diversity.
Thank you so much, Lindsey. We are going to move to the section now where our participants are tasting the mocktail version of the chamomile elderflower iced toddy. So can you talk to us a little bit about that while people are sipping?
Yeah. So, the chamomile iced, so hot toddies, right? We all know the hot toddy. Like actually, fascinatingly, hot toddies were medicine, right? Like these were given. There's probably people in the audience right now who can think back to their childhood and to having a cold or a flu and their grandma making them a hot toddy with whiskey and honey and lemon juice, right? So this is our take on the hot toddy, and it incorporates, but it's a cold toddy, and it incorporates chamomile, which is the herb of the year. So fun, right? So we get all of the beautiful benefits of the nerving aspects of chamomile that we spoke about earlier, but we also get the antiviral aspects of chamomile. So if you didn't know, chamomile is actually a pretty fantastic antiviral. I love to recommend chamomile tea bags for any children who are experiencing conjunctivitis. Placed on the eye to reduce that, microbial infection. Also, it's soothing. You can take chamomile as a, just general aid in any viral infection. And yeah, so the chamomile, not only plays on that emotional and mental wellness, but it also has this antiviral impact. It's got a beautiful constituent called the chamazoline, which actually, when it's distilled, is this incredible blue color. Chamomile is such a wonderful plant for us to celebrate. And when I think about chamomile, I think about its tradition of use, right? So there's a lot of plants that we have lost connection to as a society. Incredibly, I feel like chamomile is still one that everyone knows. And whether that's due to Beatrix Potter and, the incorporation of it into like folk tales, or the use of the incredible connection that folks did have that carried it forth into our modern times. And it is a really beautiful plant to celebrate and to have a relationship with. So how does it taste?
It's delicious. And I'm hearing audience members saying the same thing. I'm seeing lots of satisfied faces. So let's hear from the audience. I have some questions here. Martha asks, do you have an app you would recommend to help us identify different herbs growing in the wild?
So I have used plenty of these apps throughout the course of my plant journey. And I would say that I haven't found an app that is extremely effective at identification. What I use now is actually that the image search, which is a function of the internet browser. So I'll take a picture on my phone, and then if you actually click the like share picture button, you can scroll down, and most oftentimes, especially if you're using an Apple, you'll see a search with image button, and then that image search will populate plants. Now you have to be able to identify botanical features of the plant to say, "Ooh, yeah, this is a correct ID," right? So you're going to know the leaf shape, and you're going to need to count the petals, and you're going to if the flowers are present. But if you have enough plant knowledge to be able to utilize that tool to then engage with the outcomes of the search, I find it to be actually quite accurate. So that's what I use.
Another question is, when not specified otherwise, how do you make some of these drinks into a mocktail?
Yes. So any place that there's spirits, you could choose another base ingredient. So if there's carbonated water, you could add more carbonated water into it instead of spirits. If it is a spirit, you could actually choose, like say, the Violet Fizz calls for a violet vodka. You could choose to make a violet tea instead. And so that is across the board. Any place that there's an infused spirit with an herb, so the mint bourbon and the old fashioned, right? You could just make a mint tea and replace that.
So I think this next question, same person, weaves very nicely into what we can learn from the Herbal Academy itself. Is there a best way to learn how to make the infused syrups like the sweet violet, as that does not appear in the book?
Yeah. So syrups are actually quite simple to make. So I will, through Herbal Academy, point you to, we actually do have a botanical mixed drinks workshop. So this book is a product of that workshop. So if you go onto herbalacademy.com, theherbalacademy.com, you can find our course selection. So we have foundational courses, we have short courses, and then we have workshops like this botanical mixed drink. So it's a 3-lesson workshop that will definitely take you through the steps of creating all of the extracts that are mentioned in this book. So you could also search on Herbal Academy's blog. We have recipes for creating syrups there. But basically, simply, you're making a tea, making an infusion, and then you are adding 1-to-1 sugar. So if I had 8 ounces of violet flower tea, I would add 8 ounces of sugar or honey, and then I would heat those together until they combine, and then I would store that syrup in the fridge. It will last for a month or 2. And use it in your drinks. But I will say that the Herbal Academy Botanical Mixed Drinks Workshop is incredible. It is a fantastic offering. And we did discuss for the listeners and the audience members out there providing a coupon. So we have a coupon code of Botanicals for good for 1 month for our courses. And you all can hop over to the herbalacademy.com and apply the Botanicals coupon if you want to check out the offerings we have.
So another offering that might help then could go back to that question we had about the app. If you want to get better at identifying plants and then being able to use that search picture function, maybe going onto that website will also give you that education?
So we do have a botany course on our website. And if botany is something that you want to learn, our botany course is going to teach you the common leaf shapes and formations within. It's going to teach you about how to, identify the various parts of the flower. It talks about all of these basic structures of plants that support identification. So yes, if you want to learn more about botany, plant identification, that would be a great course for you. And we also have the Herbarium, which is an online database, an incredible database of offerings. We have like monographs, which are over 200 plants are monographed with botanical descriptions. We have articles, we have intensives that all teach you more about herbalism, and definitely some of that will cover the botanical, the botany side of things. And yeah, definitely a fantastic resource.
Marianne asks about the violet fizz drink you mentioned. She would like for you to spell the genus and species. It went by very quickly and she couldn't catch and write down.
Absolutely. So I'm working with the sweet violet that grows in my region, which Viola is the genus of the violets. So it is Viola sororia. So it's Soraria, sororia. But Viola odorata, Odorata, is the European sweet violet, like the species of sweet violet that is most commonly known. Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, they're the purple violets and they have a sweet smell. Violet actually has an incredible fragrance. If you have not smelled it before, I highly recommend you attempt to do so.
I have a ton of great questions left here, but okay, let me see. Do you see any new trends in herbalism?
I would say the new trend that I see in herbalism is its popularity. So again, when I started in herbalism, it was kind of like a fringe field, right? Nobody knew. And now it's like everyone knows what herbalism is and what it means. And they're excited to incorporate plants, which is the best, right? Because the more respect and admiration that we develop for plants, the more we're going to respect and admire our planet, the environment, and sure, the planet on which we live. And that's absolutely something that we need in this world.
Are there any new books that you're working on?
Again, I mentioned the herbal bitters course is upcoming. So we do have a book that we're creating, a booklet we're creating with that, which will teach you about the use of bitters and how to formulate various bitters concoctions, which is, again, going to be so beneficial. So that's one of the books that we're working on currently at the Herbal Academy.
You had actually put on a free week-long conference lately. Are there any other trainings that you do for the public?
So if you go to theherbalacademy.com and get on our mailing list, so our email list, we are constantly producing content that is open to the public. So last week, for instance, I taught a free class live on materia medica. So materia medica is, medical materials or medicine materials, healers materials. This is the umbrella term that we utilize to describe both the written material content of a plant that in its uses, but also it is like the plants that as herbalists we have within our repertoire. So materia medica free class, it was fantastic. So we do offer free series. We have a couple of free trainings that are offered various times throughout the year. Jumping into herbal studies is one of them. And we have a lot of great courses that you'll have to go check out on the website. But yeah, getting on the mailing list will open you up for those potential for the free offerings that we have. And then the conference is a free virtual herbalism conference. It was this February. It was incredible. We had 30 brilliant herbalists, and I had the honor of hosting the conference. So I interviewed all of these 30 herbalists, and it was brilliant and beautiful, all that they had to offer. And we will be doing it again next February. So that is a virtual herbalism conferences, and you can go to herbalismconferences.com and sign up for that mailing list.
Lindsey, this has been spectacular. We've learned a lot. Thank you so very much for being here. And thank you for getting us excited about learning more about how to take care of ourselves through connecting with nature through herbs.
Yes. Well, thank you, everyone. And cheers. Have a great conference.
Wise women, move from last place to first place in your life. Stop using your body as a battlefield. Let's raise health together with a customized health plan just for you. Contact me at npkhealthintegration.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.